The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our National Road Safety Partnership Program webinar today. This webinar is brought to you by the NRSUP. Today we're talking about balancing safety with business growth, and we have the awesome opportunity to talk to Tracy Dickenson from Daryl Dickenson Transport, who will share learnings and good practice on making safety stronger priority. So for those of you who don't know me, next slide please. My name is Jerome Carslake and I manage the National Road Safety Partnership Program and its many activities. So to find out more about the NRSUP, just like this webinar, case studies, any elements, please visit the NRSUP website. So our presenter today is Tracy Dickenson, as I mentioned, from Daryl Dickenson Transport. Welcome, Tracy. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Jerome.
A pleasure to have you on board today. So for those of you who haven't heard or know who Tracy is, Tracy Dickenson is a director of Daryl Dickenson Transport and was the winner of the QTA Women of the Year in 2012 and since has been made a board member of the QTA. She currently sits on the committee for the Heavy Vehicle Safety Group and has recently been appointed as a member of the Transport and Safety Industry Sector Standing Committee. Last year, Tracy was awarded the ATA National Transport Woman of the Year, and somehow in between there, you also manage and work in a trucking business, Tracy.
Yes, somewhere in all of that.
Excellent. So for those of you who don't know, today our webinar will be going for 60 minutes. We'll have plenty of time for discussion, and we are recording the session today, and it will be shared through NRSP's website. As with all of our webinars, we invite you to engage and provide input. So please use these functions, type your questions in. We have allocated a range of slides throughout the PowerPoint today where people can pose their questions, and if they're not, we'll just sort of move on. So please make it as interactive as possible, throw your questions in, and I know our learned presenter will be able to grasp onto them very well. So let's get started. Let's dial in.
Thank you,
Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much for everyone joining today. As Jerome has mentioned, I'm Tracy Dickenson and I'm family owner of a transport company. Daryl and I started as owner-operators in the transport industry, and like so many other transport companies, we were fortunate enough in 2001 to get a contract, which meant that we then formed a company. We currently employ 50 employees and have 30 trucks. In 2001, we formed the company, and by 2008, we had 36 trucks, 72 trailers, and 70 staff. So from 2001 to 2008 was rapid growth. We consciously made a decision in 2008 that was as large as we wanted to get to manage it. In 2001, we were fortunate enough to win a contract with welded tube mills, and they were steel manufacturers. Steel became our specialty with our business, and that's where we've focused on all the time. When dealing with steel, if there is an incident, it usually has large ramifications, and as such, safety became a priority of our business. In 2003, our brother-in-law was working for us at the time and he was injured. A pack of steel fell on him and pinned him underneath the trailer. Fortunately, he is still with us today to tell the tale, but it was definitely the wake-up call. Previously, as we were self-taught operators, our mentality was that our obligations to our employees ended when they left our site. From this incident, we realised our responsibilities to our employees really started from when they left their home and continued until they returned home safely. And it didn't matter what site they were on, they were still our responsibility. We realised then that we still didn't understand our responsibility under the work health and safety laws. But during this time, we had a small business, a work health and safety small business advisor come out and attend our site. The person wasn't there to prosecute or penalise us. He was there just to give us a starting point on where we could start our journey in this safety journey. He explained our key health and safety factors, highlighted safety risks, and advised us on how to proceed with policies and procedures. This business advisor became a partner to our business, and to this day I still have a lot to do with the work health and safety of Queensland and the people within it. At the time, we had a driver who had been working for us locally, and when we mentioned that we'd had this incident and that, he said that he had work health and safety experience from a previous job. So we said, okay, well, we get him in to start our journey, and we said, oh, look, we'll allocate about 20 hours per week. But we soon realised that based on the size of our fleet and employees, we really did need someone full-time. We started by getting the workers involved by having barbecue breakfasts and discussing that, you know, our safety, we need to apply safety to our workers. We created a formal induction process, and Wayne, my compliance manager, he created a driver's manual, which is a living document to this day and has grown over the years. We introduced PPE, and this in 2003 was a big hurdle. I even had one driver that tore the sleeves off his high-vis shirt and then proceeded to leave us because he didn't want to look like a clown. These days, I think it's the other way around. I think you look, if you don't see someone in high-vis, you really do start to ask why not. So have we got any questions so far?
Yeah, got one. So how did you actually feel as an organisation when you had someone push back and say, well, look, I'm not going to look like a clown?
Well, it was just, that was when we had to sort of take a stand and say, no, this is what we are going to do. It was relatively new. High-vis shirts were relatively new. PPE was relatively new. Inductions were relatively new. So as a company, I think it was having that, having us say, no, this is the way we are going to do it, and if you don't wish to come on board with us, then you'll have to go. And most of them, did stay.
And how was the view? Where did Daryl sort of fit into this as well? What is his sort of attitudes?
Daryl was probably our biggest hurdle to start off with, because Daryl being a driver and then an owner driver for 15 years previous to employing anyone, he just assumed that everyone knew what he knew. He assumed that everyone would do their job safely. So once, over many discussions Daryl and I had, it was then, we said, no, we've got to start from scratch, and we've got to get our drivers inducted and show them the safe way to work. He took a little bit of time, but we finally got him on board, and I think that's vital in this journey, that everyone's got to be on board your ride. And I think especially owners and management, because it's no good saying, oh, do this, but if the management doesn't do it, well, then the employees feel that it's us and them, and this isn't about us and them, it's about all of us collectively.
A question here from Duncan. In the initial implementation phase, did you get any pushback from the unions at all? Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you for the question. No, we had no involvement with the union. We've always just been a family-owned and based, operated company, and we have had the union come in our journey. We've had the union come in twice, and they were quite happy with how we were proceeding with our safety outcomes.
Excellent. Please continue, Tracy.
Thank you. So I suppose the big thing is that I want to get out to small and to medium companies is that you're not alone on this journey. I thought I was the only one struggling to know where to start. I didn't know how to get the first foot forward or anything. But I was listening to a larger company, and the owner of the larger company was talking about all the issues he was having, and they were exactly the same issues as what we were having. So once I realised I wasn't alone, I made me feel a lot better. I think you just got to start somewhere and proceed. I started attending, and Wayne and I started attending any free sessions that were available from Work Health and Safety. We joined a lot of associations, and we used their resources that they made available. I know WorkSafe Australia has a great site, WorkCover Queensland has a great site, Work Health and Safety Queensland has a great site. So all these sites really have great information and resources for us as small to medium business owners to refer to. From there, I started receiving newsletters and safety alerts. So then I'd look at it and I'd go, well, could that happen in my business? And if it could, then I would then go and see what I could do to implement something to make sure it didn't happen in our company. The more networking I did, the better I felt, the more confident I got about the information. The larger companies, they are really, really willing to share all their safety outcomes with the small to medium sectors. I go to Work Health and Safety Transport Safety Network meetings, and at those meetings I have representatives from Toll, I have representatives from Linfox, I have representatives from medium-sized business down to small businesses. And at these network meetings, nothing is sacred. We all discuss our safety outcomes and if we've had any incidents. So as a collective industry, we're very good at sharing our knowledge. The bigger companies I found have the resources, and when they implement something, it's been tried and tested, and then they are quite willing to share their outcomes with us. Still to this day, I get safety alerts from Linfox, Toll, all of the larger companies, and it's very handy to have. So that's how I get a lot of my information. So where did we start? The biggest hurdle, I think, was starting at the top, like I mentioned before, was getting the upper management and the owners to come on board with this journey. They see that they've only got to do logistics. They don't see the safety side of it. So it's very important to make sure they are on board, making sure you work the information throughout the ranks, and of course getting the employees buy-in is huge. You have to have that. How we did this was we had an open door policy, and our doors are open all the time. We always speak one-on-one to all our employees. We listen to them, we react, and if we can do anything to change the outcome, we do, and then we bring them back in and we let them know what outcomes have come about. So I think the biggest thing is communication with your employees. Make sure you have that open door policy, that if they've got any concerns, that they can come back to you and explain what their concerns are. And then the other thing is for you to react with it and give them outcomes so they know what's going to happen. The benefit that Daryl and I both had was we have both worked in the industry previously, so we have the ability to relate to our employees. If there was a safety issue, we could understand where they were coming from. So that was probably a benefit of being owner-operators. Ask your employees for solutions. If you ask them, if they say they have a problem, ask them for the solution. see if they can get involved. That way they become owners of the problem and the solution. And between all of you really do get outcomes. The important thing that I would say is don't forget your managers. They too have to get their input and make sure they are not getting overworked and they're being looked after. Our biggest turning point was when we introduced our employee handbooks and inductions. So every 12 months now, every staff member is re-inducted. This is non-negotiable. This is part of your employment with Daryl Dickenson Transport. The handbook is a live document that continues to evolve, constantly changing and being updated. We openly communicate with our employees also via a newsletter that we put out every month. These get emailed or posted with their pay slips. We also find that this is also good for their partners because they get to read what's going on in the Daryl Dickenson Transport space. It's also a way to communicate with off-site employees and that way it provides all updates to the employees. We also send messages quite frequently on the GPS. Now they can be short and sharp, like, are you wearing your seatbelt? Have you done your pre-check today? You know, don't forget to use 3 points of contact. Just simple, constant reminders to our employees about their safety out there. All our managers make a big effort to talk to their employees one-on-one. This way we can find out if everything's okay, you know, that everything's safe out there at the time. Our handbooks and inductions was our first big safety initiative, followed by sorry, was there any questions? Sorry.
Oh, I've got a couple of questions here. You can just go back if you want. Thanks, Tracy. So I've got a question here from Chet. What tyre pressures do you run in your empty trailers and drive tyres? The reason he asks is that he's sort of concerned around the whole body vibration. It seems to be basically ignored in Australia, even though we have quite rough roads.
Yes, that's right, we do. Look, I don't know what pressure there is, but I do know that we're in with some people with telematics, and this is about pressure in the tyres, and what it does is there's sensors in the tyres, and when the tyres start going flat or there's below a certain rate, they send an alarm to the driver and back to us in the office, so we know that there's a tyre going flat. So that does definitely help in the safety space. I'm sorry, I don't know what, but I can definitely find out and let you know.
Awesome. We'll take that as a follow-up from you, Tracy. I've got a great question here from Andrew. Do you have any tips on tackling complacency, particularly if they're being re-inducted every 12 months?
Great question, because I think that's the problem. We do get complacent in the job that we do. Everyone, and I know on site here in my warehouse, I'll walk down and they'll be doing the same job that they did yesterday. I think that it's once you build a culture in your team that people remind each other what not to do, or if they're doing something incorrect. It's these reminders that we send out on the GPS. We're hoping that that reminds them, you know, to do things safely and to get them home safely, because I do, and quite often, you know, a driver will come in and we'll talk to him and we'll have a look at his load and we'll go, what's wrong with that load? I think another set of eyes on your load restraint is great. You know, how they're approaching their vehicle, if they're on top of a vehicle, have they got the right PPE? So it's just mainly giving everyone the power to advise each other if they're doing something unsafe.
Last question before we move on. Question here from Frank. He wants to know, how do you empower the managers to be the best at their job, and how do you draw out the more quiet employees?
Oh, good question. Because we make the managers realise that they are part of this chain, I suppose you can say, the chain of responsibility that's coming in, but empower them to say that they've got, they're looking after these people and encouraging them to do what everyone else is doing, because there's no us and them, like I said before. I think it's all us together. And by us, I mean the owners don't berate the managers, give them the power and support them when they make a decision, whether it's a safety decision or otherwise, because then that way they know that you're there to back them up. So that's what I would suggest, is just to give your managers the power, but and probably educate them that it's not a power as such. It's just give them the information and the tools to spread the word about the safety issues.
Wonderful. And I think Matthew makes the point here, culture is driven from the top down. So would you like to continue, Tracy?
Yes, thank you. So one of our things that we did was we went dogless as a company. We decided to eliminate lever dogs from our fleet. This was relatively unheard as such in the transport industry for load restraint. We decided, we consulted the drivers and asked them what they thought, and we gave them alternative options. We trained them on it, and then we asked them to use them in different applications, and we got them to come back and give us the feedback on this. We also asked drivers which preference they would like in which apparatus. We spoke with our customers and we told them that we were wanting to go dogless, and we had positive feedback from that. This wasn't something that happened overnight. This was a 12 to 24 month period of trial and testing and training and replacement. As you would be aware, a lever dog probably is about $15. We went with maxi binders and web dogs, and they are considerably a lot dearer than that. But we felt the safety outcomes outweighed the price, and so it did take 12 to 24 months before all the fleet had the necessary load restraint in it. We've now had that for many years, and we continue to do training days on them, how to use both alternatives. We do prefer the maxi binder. We find the web dog does tendency to fray, so you must train your employees to make sure they're aware of that sort of fraying that can cause to them being broken. The next thing was the GPS system. This was another initiative that was a large investment for such a small to medium business, but it was one that we really thought would be beneficial for everyone. And it wasn't installed to punish the driver, but more to educate the driver. It showed us, it was a real big eye-opener for us actually when we first put them in, because it showed us drivers' habits that we were really as a company unaware of. Things like harsh braking, excessive revving, speeding and fatigue. Also idling was a big factor, and in being in Queensland, they all like to jump into nice air-conditioned cabs, so they used to idle a fair bit. Of course, there was huge driver resistance when we started this, but we explained why we were doing it. We told them, that there was no need to have any concerns, but they felt that we would be Big Brother and that we'd be watching them, and that if they did something wrong, their job security would be not there. So it took a fair while, but Daryl brought them in one-on-one and just showed them how we used the system to improve their driving abilities, to improve their safety. If someone is harsh braking, that tendencies to let us know that he or she is too close to the car or truck in front, and we've asked them just to pull back a bit. Excessive revving, this was, they would be changing gears at too high of a rev. So in that case, it saved us with gearboxes and clutches. It was a great saving tool. The idling time, like I said, was basically a fuel saver for us. And speeding, of course, these days it's up to us to know what our drivers are doing, and this was a great tool. And of course, fatigue. This was also a great tool, just to see that the drivers are having their breaks when they're staying. The ability, we created a scorecard actually for the drivers, and each week we put out who had the best driving scorecards, and it was quite a positive thing within the fleet. The drivers would actually ring up to see how they scored last week. So you can take initially drivers' resistance, but now it's a given, and they're a great tool that we use to communicate with our drivers. So we don't ring them, we communicate on the GPS system, and that way we usually say, call us when you've pulled over, or we let them know where their next pickup is without having to talk to them. I find that's a very good tool, because then that way they're not answering their mobile phone while driving. The other tool that it's good for is sometimes you can see when there is traffic jams ahead. So I usually just send a message out to say avoid this area as there's been an accident and there's traffic jam there. So that then helps them navigate another route.
We're getting some great questions now, Tracy. Just a quick one from me first. So why is dog chains a risk?
It's been found that lever dogs have a spring back, coil back reaction, and it does a lot of head and eye injuries. We found that drivers were using pipes on the end of them, and they were pulling down on them. And if they recoiled, it would hit them in the head or the eye.
I can understand the reason for the change. So question here from Noel. Great presentation first, Tracy. So how are driver infringements handled? Do you get advice from police when drivers commit an offence?
No, unfortunately, we still don't get that information from the police. But I do believe it is something that is being looked at as part of the national, the heavy safety group that I'm involved in. It is something that I've brought up many times to the Queensland Transport Department, that if one of our trucks are caught speeding or there is an infringement against the truck, that as owners I think that we should be made aware. Our drivers are inducted to say that they are to let us know whenever there is an infringement, and that they are to bring in the infringement so we can keep it on file as well. I don't know that it always happens. I can't say that they always do, but generally speaking, no, there is no way at the moment that we know if there's an infringement against the truck.
Question here from Gabby. Did drivers change their speeding behaviour after GPS was introduced?
Absolutely. It was a revelation, and it was our interstate trucks are all speed limited to 96. And it was interesting, Daryl would discuss to them, 4 kilometres is not a lot, and from when we dropped our speed limit down and started watching the speed of the drivers, we've had less incidents or phone calls from the general public saying, your truck's tailgating me, or, he was driving really fast past me. So we've eradicated a lot of that. The drivers, it's a bit of a joke between us, but we say you're getting paid by the hour. So, if you're speeding, you're really robbing yourself of some time. So we try to encourage no speeding. I don't say that it doesn't happen, and there is incidents where it does, but they get an alert. We've got our GPSs set at 102. So if they're doing 102, an alert comes up on the GPS and says, you are speeding, thank you, Daryl. And then it's only, when we have a look at them, they're only for 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds, generally probably off a bit of a hill, I would say, and then they're back into the speed limit again.
Great answer. Question here from Duncan. Have you been able to quantify how much fuel consumption has reduced by the improved behaviours?
Yes, we have, but I haven't got those figures here today. But look, just in the idling of the trucks and the speed, by knocking the speed back to 96, the savings, I think Daryl said, was 2%. It's a fair amount. It's a great argument. And that's how we put it across to our drivers too, that, by driving at the lower speed, they still get there at relatively the same time. It's just it's better fuel economy for us. And part of the reporting of the GPSs gives out what sort of fuel economy that truck does. So the drivers have really taken on with great pride that they're getting good fuel economy out of their trucks.
Question here from Matthew. Do you have a I'll get this right. Do you have a driver and load safety inspection which takes into consideration GVM, load restraints, container weight declaration, weight distribution of the axles, tyre and vehicle checks for the driver?
Well, we do a pre-check of a morning. We do load restraint, and most places where we load out of, there is an audit done before you left, because we were, a lot of the steel companies do a lot of the audits as they come. Other things that we do is they do paperwork checks. I think it's about the training, I think, Jerome, is getting people trained to make sure they know, what the expectation is for their safety and their load restraint.
And Duncan's just looking to expand on his previous question here. A lot of the stats suggest that most HGV speeding incidents occur around the 60-kilometre limit. Are you seeing that too?
Yes, we did. We've seen it hugely around. And look, any of our incidents that we do have with, say, mobile speeding cameras, they're all in the local area where it's, a 60k and they're doing 64 or 65. That's where we get most of our fines from. So yes, when we turn the GPS on and we put it on, we just had heaps of alerts. The problem we had with it locally was that the GPS, especially if you're on motorways and you're under a motorway and on top of a motorway, the one below might be 60, but the one above might be 80. So then it would say that you were speeding. So we actually turned them off for the local and have them more for the interstate long distance.
Thank you, Tracy. Shall we move on?
Yes. Okay, Okay, this one is pretty self-explanatory, but without our employees, we wouldn't have a company, and they are our most valuable asset. We try to show appreciation for their efforts, and in that way is like their reports of how they've been driving and giving them feedback and that. We also make sure that the communication is always open and available. We have our mobile phones on us, our doors, our office doors are always open. We always try to have at least once a week talk to all our drivers just to see how they're going. We definitely, and this is a hard one in the transporter industry, but it's something that I think as an industry we've got to look at, is the work-life balance. I think the saying goes, happy wife, happy life, and with most of our drivers, they have got partners and wives at home, so we do try to make sure they have that work-life balance. We take an interest in their families and what they're into doing, so that they know that we do care about them as a whole. When we first have someone come on board, we put them in a buddy system. They go in a truck for 1 to 2 weeks. We put them with a driver that has been with us for several years and knows what our expectations are, knows the safety training that is expected. He or she helps with paperwork issues, getting familiar with the truck that the driver's going to be driving. I know that it's a cost to small to medium businesses, even to large businesses, but I really believe that it is a small cost that could save you down the track, in that the driver knows your procedures, knows how to process your paperwork, he knows what your expectations are for load restraint. We have 2 compulsory training days throughout the year. This is a great time to communicate with the groups of employees. We only have about 15 staff members each Saturday for 3 Saturdays, and we discuss any issues that they have, and once someone starts, they all start talking. So this is a great way of getting good feedback about safety issues out there. The first training day is where we induct our drivers, and the second one is for our load restraint. We do a load restraint course every year, and at this load restraint course we actually put photos up on the wall, and these are all examples of our own load restraint incidents. So this is a great way of teaching our drivers and staff about the errors that they've made in their load restraint. We get positive feedback. They get involved in it because we just go, okay, what's wrong with this photo? And then all of a sudden they start talking about the load restraint and what was missing or what could have been done better. The big thing that I would say is flexibility. I know it's very hard, again, in the transport industry, but it's one that we've got to give our employees flexibility to go and see their son or daughter play sports or go to a school event. We just encourage our employees, if they want that time off, to just make sure they let us know as soon as they can. That way we can work things around with them. One other thing that I would just like to put in here is to get your injured employees back to work as soon as possible. The biggest advantage of getting them back to work is that they feel still part of the team. We even, to the point where we go and pick them up and bring them back into the office. So they're amongst their peers, they're amongst their workers, they're not sitting at home feeling sorry for themselves. We get them to do, if they're on light duties, we get them to do risk assessments, we get them to do JSAs, we get them to do logbook pages, you know, to make sure our logbook pages, our drivers are compliant. These are all things that drivers and staff members can do MSDS folders. Yeah, look, a lot of companies believe they don't have light duties, but I think if you look outside the square, we all do. And it's just great to get the employees back in, and they just want to get back to work. And last year we had a 100% return to work within 5 days, so I'm very proud of that. So the benefits of all this hard work that we're doing is that you see improved safety outcomes all the time. I know you can't see an incident that's going to happen that you may have prevented, but we do, sometimes question all the effort we're putting in. Are we seeing the benefits out of it? But I can reassure you, yes, you do. You don't see the dollar value for your investment, but the results are shown in other ways, i.e. Reduced injury rates, lower work cover premiums, low insurance premiums. I must admit, our boys take pride, or our staff take a lot of pride in their gear. They don't seem to knock it around like when we first started back in 2003. They just hit gates, they'd hit trees, they'd hit cars, but through educating them to get out of the truck to have a look where they're going and that, we don't have the claims that we used to have. We've become a client preference. They look for us. They know that we cart steel, so anyone that's in the steel game, we get a lot of referrals back. We have positive a reputation of training and caring for our people, so that shows by, luckily we won the 2016 QTA Industry Safety Award, and I was a finalist at the Safety Advocacy Award last year, and like Jerome mentioned at the beginning, I won the 2017 Industry Woman of the Year. The other thing is that you become an employer of choice, and I've recently had some drivers leave and go to other companies. Generally speaking, our policy is once you leave, we don't usually re-employ, because we've moved on and our safety has moved on with us, and they usually come back and are not on the same journey as us. But these two gentlemen had only left us for such a short time. They just said that they got offered more dollars. They were offered way more dollars, but they found that because we were more personal, we cared where they were, we rang them every day to see how they were going, they felt that they were appreciated. So this is where the small to medium companies can really have it over the bigger companies or larger companies, in that we can, be very personal with your staff. I actually received an email about a week ago from an employee, a past employee, and in that it just came out of the blue, and it was so nice to get it. And out of that email, he said that he thanked us for all that we'd done for him, and that for other jobs that he'd gone to, he had still been implementing all the learnings that he'd learnt from our company. So when you get emails like that, it really does make it worthwhile, and you're doing the right thing.
It's the small things, Tracy, isn't it? The grass wasn't so green.
Small things, yeah.
Got some more questions here, of course. So one from Andrew. What procedures do you have in place around fatigue management and working in isolation?
Okay, we're pretty fortunate. Most of our blokes, or most of our drivers, go the same route to the same place each week. So where we're lucky is that they have their day that they leave, usually Sunday, and they're back in the depot at Thursday or Friday. So they have Friday, Saturday off. So we're fortunate that way. I know a lot of transport companies haven't got that pleasure of having that sort of same routes and all the rest of it. The one that I struggle with, and the one that we've got to really be careful with, is our local drivers. I do quite often, and I'm in the office all the time, and I listen, and you just mention how long has he been working for, and quite often you'll find that it's your local drivers that may go over the hours, and you've got to bring that back and re-educate your managers to say, look, if that happens, this is what you need to do, and there's an alternative, there's another solution. So it's very important, our fatigue, and even the fatigue of staff members that aren't driving, you know, in your warehouse or your workshop, or even your managers, you know, they sometimes have very long days. So you've got to watch everyone's fatigue.
And I guess this one here just expands on a little bit further from Henry. Work-life balance and fatigue safety. What's the maximum number of hours that you will allow a driver to undertake per day?
14 hours, 15 hours is the maximum, and that includes their breaks. So you've got to, and it depends on what shift they're doing and all the rest of it. But look, we don't want them working big hours. You can't keep them working big hours, because that's when you do get incidents. So if they've had a big day today, we mightn't start them till later tomorrow, so they can just have that work-life balance, and two, that they're not fatigued. And we have even had, and recently we had a driver that said to his supervisor that he was tired, and we sent him home even during his shift, because we can't have them out there if they're fatigued and driving these heavy vehicles. There was no penalty to him. There was no penalty to the supervisor. We actually thank the driver for being open and honest about it, and we thank the operations manager for being open and honest about it. Yes, it does put your world into a spin, but at the end of the day, it's better not to deliver something than to deliver it on a highway somewhere and not to the customer's work site. So that's the work-life balance we're very aware of, and especially knowing a lot of our drivers, and if they've got young family, we're aware of that. If they've got other things, other responsibilities, and maybe looking after an older person or whatever, we just tell them that if they think they're doing too many hours, that open door policy is there. Come and talk to us, and we will adjust it accordingly.
Fantastic. And question here from John, if you don't mind. Who do you use as your load restraint advisor?
Sorry, what was that again, Jerome? I missed it.
Who do you use as your load restraint advisor?
Look, I'm fortunate enough. I have probably half a dozen people within our organisation that has the Blue Scope load restraint course under their belt. I also have a Blue Scope trainer on site. My compliance manager is a load restraint trainer. So all our managers are trained in load restraint, and then we have all our supervisors attend these courses as well. So everyone within the organisation comes to these load restraint days. We do Blue Scope and One Steel load restraint, so that's the guide that we use. So that's how we train, especially new blokes. They're brought in and trained and in the office at first, but then we send them out, and we all send them to each different section of our business so they can understand all the load restraint. And again, we make them aware that if they're not sure, to ask, because there's no dumb question when you're talking about load restraint. Our drivers are very, very good. If they see a new driver, they will go up and ask him if he needs a hand. Again, I think that's a cultural thing, that it's not, it's not silly to go up and tell someone. It's a really good thing, and that's good, and that is something that I have had feedback from new drivers that that they didn't feel made to be silly or anything by asking a question. They weren't belittled or anything or chastised. It was just a pure, okay, I don't know how to do this, can you show me? And someone is always there to show them. To the point,
Fantastic.
actually, Jerome, that they can ring us, and
Yep.
if they're on site somewhere and they're struggling, they've all got a load restraint guide in their truck that they can refer back to that. But if they are still struggling, we then assist them over the phone. If they still can't get it and they're around locally, we will physically go to that site and help them.
What a fantastic answer. Thanks for that. I'll let you move on. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. So, keys to our safety success, I can say getting involved, share your experiences, network as much as you can. Make sure you take your employees with you, recognise their importance and get their buy-in early. It's all about them and their safety, and that's what we say. It's not about us and our safety, it's about them and their safety. Having that open door policy, and don't let your employees feel that they're chastised or belittled. But you've got to make sure your employees realise their responsibilities and that there can be ramifications for action. But together we can find solutions. The biggest one is your continuous improvement. Revisit and review. All day, every day, we would walk out in our office into the warehouse and we would be eyes on a different load, and we would look at it and see if it's been done correctly. Is the forklift driver got the loading zones right? You know, where is the driver for the truck? So, and revisiting your manuals and making sure that they're up to date and they're what's relevant to what you are doing. I know sometimes we get swamped by these, oh, we'll sell you this, handbook, but it mightn't be relevant to your business. You've got to make it relevant to your business and make it relevant to your employees that they take ownership. So safety is not a destination, it's a journey. There's always opportunities to improve your safety outcomes. For us, it was such a big increase. We grew so fast, and then in 2008, when we decided, no, that was as big as we got, we also decided, well, we've got to do our safety better. So it's a difficult procedure, but it's achievable. Always be aware of your growth and your requirements of your business, how things change and change with it. Use lots of resources that are made available from safety networks, from the websites that I mentioned before, from your associations, the QTA, the ATA, NatRoads, TruckSafe. All of these will help you. They will all help you on your journey. Start from the top. Everyone must be on board. That's what I've got to say. Yeah, and we as owners have to lead by example, and managers have to lead by example. I can give you an example where one day we had a school student in doing work experience, and even as work experience students, they were inducted into our company and they were told about our safety and what we expected of them. Daryl happened to go out to the warehouse and he happened to get onto the back of a trailer and he didn't have his helmet or chin strap on. So the student went and got it and tapped Daryl on the foot and said, I think you've forgotten this. And Daryl said, thank you. That way it showed that it doesn't matter who it is, you can tap anyone on the shoulder and say, hey, you haven't done this, or you're doing this unsafe or whatever. And there's no ramifications if you do that. There should be no ramifications when it comes to safety. Don't try to do it all at once. I think that's where people get a bit overwhelmed. Just do one thing at a time. The hardest part is knowing where to start. And once you start doing one thing, that flows into the next thing. It does get easier. I must admit, I think it gets easier. Now it's just part of our everyday workings. Sometimes when you plan things to do, it doesn't work. You've got to try and you have to retrain again. And just don't give up on it. You've just got to keep trying and keep at it. I think that the biggest thing is that when we all get busy, we forget about the safety. And I think that's the hardest time. If you are going to have an incident, it is when you are really busy and everyone's trying to get things done. So what I would say is safety has to be kept going at all times because it's really hard to start up again. My final message would be don't give up. Never give up. Keep talking to your staff. Reiterate why we want them to do things safely so they can get home safely, so they can see their family again. We use the example a lot in our company that if you hurt yourself and you're laying in bed at night in pain, unfortunately I'm not going to be losing sleep, and I'm sure his wife or partner's not going to be losing sleep. So just be aware that we want you to get home safely and do your job safely. Questions?
Wow. Thank you very much. So next question from Julia. How do you work with other parties in the chain of responsibility to ensure the safety of your transport activities?
Excellent question, because this is a really big one, and it's about getting relationships with your clientele. I think that's, again, communications. So how we do it is we have monthly meetings with some. We have meetings only when an incident may happen, but we've empowered our drivers that if they're at a site and they're not happy with how things are going, or they feel it's unsafe, they are to ring us. It's a must. You must instill into your drivers, if they get that feeling that it's unsafe, ring your manager. Once the manager is contacted, we then ring our clientele and we give them incidents. And we've had times where we have gone in the car and gone out to where these places are, or afterwards, if they've finished unloading and the driver comes back and says, I didn't think that was a good place to unload, we give them the power to let us know, and we will go out with our clients and we will have a look at the delivery point or pick-up point. But I think the secret to it is instilling your workers that they have the ability, with no ramifications or chastising or whatever, to give you a call and say, hey, I think this is unsafe. I think the biggest thing when we deal with our clients is now, especially now, we let them know that they're in this chain of responsibility, and if they're asking my drivers to do things that are not safe, that I will be coming, we will be coming after them because we have made them aware that it is an unsafe practice.
Excellent question. We won't have time for any other ones, so I do apologise, everyone. So I will hold the questions over and pass them to Tracy and see if she can answer them directly through us. But just a closing sort of question. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate you on your massive organisational and cultural change. Are there any learnings for the audience, things you might do differently as a closing thought?
No, I just think you will make mistakes, or you won't see the outcome straight away. Like, I've been doing this from 2003, and I've only just probably seen results in 2015, 16, 17. So it's a time thing, and especially if you've got to change the culture within your company, that's the biggest thing. It's changing the culture and getting everyone to come on that ride with you.
Now, that's a great answer to close with. It's very much an investment and it's a journey.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time today, Trace. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience. If you haven't registered for the NRSUP newsletter, please go to our website and register to be kept up to date. It's been an interactive webinar, so thank you all very much. And I look forward to you joining us in the future.